Another story about a lorry today. This is from about 1995. It all revolves around the heavy horse centre that Ruth and I started in Lincolnshire in 1988. It all began because of a couple of horses, heavy horses that we had. Our interest for many years had been horses and driving horses. And then Ebony arrived. We'll tell you about Ebony, or you can read Ebony about in his storybook. It's available online, a picture storybook, free to download. It's very good actually. So when he came back to live with us, once he'd been working in London for 70 years or so, he brought with him Sam. Now, so we had these heavy horses and some light horses and a small fermette, small holding. So we decided to try and create something of interest to the public. And it'd been running several years, ups and downs. It was non-profit making. It wasn't a charity because Ruth and I lived on the premises and we owned the premises and we ran it. So you can't have a charity if the people that run it and own it are supposedly benefiting, we're living on it, so it can't be a charity. But it was charitable. It made no money. In fact, I didn't draw a penny for over 25 years because there wasn't anything to draw. The horses ate it all. It was costing us, about this time, 1993, 94, around about £125 a week. A day. £125 a day running costs. There were about 15 heavy horses there. A lot of them incapacitated. They were there because of problems with their health, or their owners had problems with their health and couldn't care for the animals. So there we are. Ruth, my wife, had a full-time job. She was our local district nurse, and it's her money that went into helping to keep the place afloat. There was an awful time a couple of years before this particular story, but we'll come to that later. Okay, now about this time we had a Land Rover, or a Land Rover Safari, and it had been suffering from tin worm for some considerable time, so it had to go off the road. It needed serious structural work, almost beyond repair really. I'd been welding it up for ages and it had come to the limit. So we had nothing to pull our trailer. Well, we did. We had the trailer. We were collecting straw and hay and things from all over the place, wherever we can beg, borrow or buy reasonably cheaply, and food and bedding for the animals. We needed a lot, you can imagine. And just recently there'd been an incident on the main railway line to the north, LNER, yeah, main line to Edinburgh, where just north of Doncaster, a chap had run off the motorway and ran down the motorway access road in his Land Rover, derailed an express train, and a lot of people had died. So because our trailer was often, not legal really behind the Land Rover, then we had to look for something else. The place was run by Ruth and myself, but we had volunteers to help us wherever we could get volunteers, and principal volunteers at this time were John, who lived in Grimsby and worked for Birdseye, a lorry driver, ever such a nice chap, and Trina, who'd come to help us a few years before with her husband and lived on the premises. Her husband worked on a farm at Horncastle and she was my assistant day to day. And it was generally agreed that we needed something to pull our trailer, and something more legal and something safer than our decrepit Land Rover, if we were to remain legal, as it were, and safe and everything. So anyway, we had a look around, and I used to take a newspaper called Farmer's Guardian. It was hints and tips for farmers and farming stories, and it had adverts. And one day I found an advert in the back for a second-hand lorry, 7.5 tonner. It was in Lancashire, we had a little bit of a meeting one morning, and I rang up to see if this lorry was still available. I think it was a Friday, and it was. So, and John was day off, so we decided we'd go and look at it. £500, but regularly maintained. It had been working on in a mill, been delivering foodstuffs for the mill to local farmers roundabouts, but they decided to stop the delivery service and get the farmers to collect the stuff themselves. So we went to have a look, and at that time we had a little Subaru pickup, rocket on wheels. You know, Subarus, I can't remember where they're made, but they're not English. A flat 4 air-cooled engine, like a Citroen, you know, like the 2CV and that kind of thing, but and the early Porsche, of course. But this was a air-cooled flat 4. It went like a rocket, this thing did. So John and I went off to Lancashire. We got there just after lunch, and eventually found this mill right up in the Forest of Bowland, which is just on the Lancashire-Yorkshire border, best accessible from Lancashire side because the roads in Yorkshire in that area aren't very good at all. And we arrived at this mill. There was the lorry. But it was dirty, filthy. Inside the cab was a right mess, but it went well, and it had good maintenance records. You know, they were there to be seen. And so it had a curtain sided body, which is the body wasn't that long. It had curtains, you know, it was a box body, but they had curtains that drew at the sides and were secure, so things couldn't fall out, which is quite handy, and doors at the back. So we did a deal, and we backed the lorry up to a loading dock, drive the little Subaru onto the back of the lorry, close the doors and the curtains, and set off home. Road tax? No. Don't ask any other awkward questions. So we set off home about almost 200 miles back to Lincolnshire from where we were, right down the M6 to Manchester, picked up the M62, across into Yorkshire and down the A1. Well, by this time it was about 5 o'clock, and I suppose I wasn't at home, and Ruth would have come home expecting me to be somewhere about, and I wasn't. So we thought we'd better telephone Ruth and tell her where we were. So John had the phone, so John made the call and rang Ruth up, and he said, we're going to be a bit late home. What are you doing? She said. I said, well, we're coming down the A1 and Ruth's driving a lorry. What? Driving a lorry? What's he driving a lorry for? Well, John says, well, we bought it. It's a long story to do with a train wreck at Doncaster and Land Rovers and collecting hay and straw, and Keith will explain to you when we get home. And with that, the phone at the other end was dropped suddenly, and we continued on our journey. So that gave me an hour or two to think about how to explain what we'd done, you know, and this story about the train wreck at Doncaster and people getting killed and things, it was quite plausible, and that was how I got away with it, I suppose. But that lorry, we used it for several years, and we took the body off and put a flat body on it. There's some pictures we actually... Now, before we go, we'd actually got a booking to take some horses and like a mobile shop and a demo team, because we did demos of driving horses to music and long reining heavy horses and things, and you know, a bit of a musical drive. And we'd got a booking from a big firm on the Humber Bank, Novartis. Now they are big, you know, they're worldwide, to go on one of their open days and take a demo, 2 or 3 heavy horses and things, and do a bit of a demo on their, I think it's a recreational day for the families working for the company. And they'd agreed to pay us £500. Well, maybe not as much, maybe it was 400. Anyway, we took this lorry, and we'd still got the body on us. We'd got it washed and everything, and we'd got our trailer behind it, because we've got this big box trailer, you see, which take a horse. It actually took 3 heavy horses in it sometimes. We took that to Novartis, and we sold a lot of stuff from the shop, and within 100 quid we'd paid for the lorry, which was pretty good. Without that lorry we couldn't have done that, and we did this several times, and so the lorry became a very useful piece of kit for us. We did another job in Lincoln. We went to a big pet store, did a demo and things like that, and they paid for us to go. So that's a bit of this lorry, how we came to have this lorry. It was a Leyland, can't remember the exact model, but it had a Cummins engine in it. It's 7.5 ton Leyland, late 1990s, early 1980s, late 1970s, I think it was. It was we've got it painted and whatever. It was a good strong little lorry, and so that's how we came to get it. There's some more stories coming up about things that happened to the lorry, but there we are. That's how we came to buy a lorry. Hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget, if you like what we do, then give us a click, like it, and please try and subscribe to the channel, because that helps the channel to grow. It's very good for us, that. Share a story with a friend, tell your mates if you like the stories. Don't forget the colour picture storybook about Ebony. You can see it on our website, www.crackerbooks.fr. It's free to download. Kids will enjoy it as well. So until the next time, thank you for being with us, and cheerio.